Good morning. I hope you weren't surprised when you got here this morning, expecting Ronnie and getting me instead. Hey, not everybody likes it when things go against the grain of their expectations. They're expecting one thing and they get something else. And that's what a true surprise is. Some of you, if there's any of you out here who are expecting a baby to come into your life and you've decided not to use technology to determine the gender of that baby before the baby's born, and somebody asks you about that, don't say, we're wanting to be surprised. Because what are you expecting, right? I mean, it's going to be either a baby boy or a baby girl, right? You're not going to be surprised. I hope not. A true surprise, is something that goes against the grain of your expectation. When you're expecting one thing, you're expecting Ronnie, and you got something else. Have you ever had gotten a drink? Maybe you normally drink tea, but for some reason you got Dr. Pepper on one occasion and you forgot that you got Dr. Pepper and you put it to your mouth thinking it was the tea and you were surprised for a second? Am I the only one that's happened to? I had a friend of mine who mentioned they bought some, they got a handful of what they thought were M&Ms and they put them in their mouth and they were Skittles. That was a surprise. They were expecting one thing and it went against the grain of their expectation. That's what a true surprise is. And on one occasion that we're going to read about this morning, Jesus got a true surprise. He got something that went against the grain of his expectation. He was expecting one thing, but he got something else. He knew what to expect normally from Roman centurions. Jesus did. Here in Luke 7, where we're going to be reading in a little bit. He knew that these centurions were hardened old soldiers. They knew all about following orders. This particular officer, the one we're going to be reading about in a moment, he was a soldier, an officer, a centurion in the most powerful army in the world. The Roman Empire wasn't built by the soft, by the weak, or by the undisciplined. It was built by strong men who knew how to give orders and to follow orders, by tough, strong men. Historians of the Roman Empire tell us that the Roman soldier did almost nothing without following orders, unless orders were involved. It makes me think of, some of you have not seen this, but some of you will have, the movie Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson's character, right? We follow orders, son. We follow orders or people die. That's a terrible impression, I know. But if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That's what I think about. We follow orders, son. That's what this centurion was like. He was like this Jack Nicholson character. He knew all about giving orders to the people beneath him. But he wasn't at the top of the food chain. He also got orders from those above him. The orders that he got were a little different than the orders he gave. The orders he got, there was a little discretion in how to go about doing what he was told to do. The orders he gave, you go here and you do this, right? These centurions, again, were powerful men who worked very hard in a powerful army. And they were proud of what they were a part of and what they had accomplished. And it was easy for kind of superior elitism to be found in such men because they weren't like those ruling elite back in Rome who lived under the very blanket of the protection of the freedom they provided, right? If you remember that same scene from that movie. They weren't like the cocktail party ruling elite who didn't know what it was like to serve on the front lines. But they also weren't like the undisciplined masses, hordes of people that didn't know about living a strong, disciplined life. And so it was easy for kind of superior elitism to be found in these guys. They knew how to respect authority within the chain of command, but it was easy for them to see the rest of the world with a kind of haughty contempt. They were the worthy ones. They weren't like the elite, and they weren't like the unwashed masses. They were the worthy ones. But this particular Roman centurion is not what you would have expected from a Roman centurion. He surprised Jesus. He was unusual in many ways. We're told in the text here, the Jewish elders, they were in Capernaum, and the Jewish leaders there in Capernaum went to Jesus, and the text says, pleaded earnestly for Jesus to help this man. Now, typically, Jewish leaders did not plead earnestly for someone to help an officer of the invading army. But this guy was different. His trusted servant was sick and about to die. And the Jewish leaders went to Jesus, and it says, pleaded earnestly for Jesus to help them. And notice what the Jewish elders said about this guy, about the centurion. They said this: this man is worthy of your help. Now, there's some important things in that very simple sentence that it's easy to miss. It makes me think of a story about a guy named Bose Ickard. I bet most of you have never heard of Bose Ickard. Bose was born into slavery in Tennessee in 1843, and he moved to Texas as a young boy. And when he got here, he learned how to be a cowboy. Soon after getting here, he got his freedom, and he was hired into the employment of a guy named Charles Goodnight. By the way, if you've ever seen the movie Lonesome Dove, Dietz's character is modeled after Bose Ickard. So Bose Ickard was a real-life figure, and he was the long-time, I don't know the right word, employee, hired servant, friend of Charles Goodnight for a long time. Eventually, Bose Ickard died. You can go to Weatherford and you can see his tombstone today, and this is what it says on his tombstone. Served with me 4 years on Goodnight Loving Trail. Never shirked a duty or disobeyed an order. Rode with me in many stampedes. Participated in 3 engagements with Comanches. Splendid behavior, Charles Goodnight. Have you noticed it yet? I don't want to run down a guy like Charles Goodnight because there's a lot of things to really respect about these guys, right? Charles Goodnight was something of a cattle baron in Texas where there were still Indian skirmishes. He was a strong, disciplined man who knew how to build something out of nothing, right? This was a hard-working, tough guy with a strong personality. Makes me think of the Roman centurion in many ways, quite honestly. But he was a longtime friend or something like that of this guy, Bose Ickard. And when Bose Ickard died, Charles Goodnight thought it was fitting for him to put a recommendation letter on Ickard's tombstone. It's almost as if Charles Goodnight is telling the Almighty, this is a good one. Take it on my authority. He's worthy. Splendid behavior. Bose is worthy. And I'm fit to pronounce that because I know I'm worthy. So notice what's happening in this text. Both the Jewish leaders and the Roman centurion were members of groups who typically took their own worth for granted without even thinking about it, like blinking or breathing, without even knowing they're doing it. These Jewish fathers, you can see that they believe this because they thought that their recommendation for the centurion should carry weight. This man is worthy of your help. And we know this because, of course, we're among the worthy. The Jewish elders were descendants of the patriarchs of the faith, and they believed themselves to be worthy because of their family line. And the centurions were members of the most powerful army in the world, and they believed themselves to be worthy because of their accomplishments and their skill within that army. I wonder what groups you and I are part of that just kind of like blinking or breathing, we think we're worthy because of our membership in that group, and we never even stop to reflect on it. I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's being an American, the new most powerful country in the world. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe it's because kind of something inside yourself kind of thinks kind of on an intuitive level with ever really stopping to reflect about it. You think, hey, look, I'm a hardworking member of the middle class. I'm not like those who enjoy the entitlements of the elite, and I'm not like those in the folly of poverty. I'm a hardworking member of the middle class. Of course, I'm among the worthy. Or maybe you reject that line of thinking, right? Maybe you're a good progressive and you think you're worthy because you reject the greed and hatred of the right, and you're trying to save the environment, and you care about all the right causes, and you're a good progressive. So of course you're worthy. Or maybe you're a good conservative. You're worthy because you're taking a stand against the ungodly values of the left. Whatever, however it is you see the world. I don't know how it is for you. Or maybe you're a good churchgoer. And there's something in you without even thinking, like blinking or breathing, you just kind of think you're worthy because you're among those who take your responsibilities to the church seriously. Unlike those who just show up every now and then. So of course you're among the worthy. Like the Jewish elders and the Roman soldiers, it is still astonishing to find people who know that they are among the unworthy and yet still believe God is capable of and willing to provide his healing presence. So we have the opportunity, like that Roman soldier, to surprise God. So let's take a closer look at what was so surprising about the centurion. What was it that surprised Jesus? That's what the text says. Remember remember what's going on in the story again. The Jewish elders go to Jesus and they plead with him to go help this guy. And so Jesus went with them to the man's house. But while they're still on the way to the house, the Roman centurion, he sends another delegation of people, and he's not in it. He doesn't even go. And this is what the delegation of people that the centurion sent to meet Jesus and the Jewish elders. They give him a message, word for word, from the centurion, and this is what they say. This is in the text. Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. That's why I'm not even in this delegation. That's why I didn't consider myself worthy to even come to you. I'm not worthy. But say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. That was the message from the centurion. In this message, the centurion's respect for authority is obvious, and that's not at all unusual for a Roman officer. His whole world, after all, is structured around the giving and receiving of orders, around a proper appreciation of the hierarchy of authority. That part's not unusual, but there are two aspects of this message that are incredibly unusual, and we should pay attention to them. First, it's astonishing that the Roman officer recognized his own position as a man under the authority of Jesus. That's amazing. That's not what you would expect from a Roman centurion. Roman officers didn't recognize the authorities outside the military chain of command, much less a Jewish peasant. But this man believed that Jesus had the authority to save. This Roman centurion believed that Jesus had the authority to heal. He recognized the authority of Jesus, and that was astonishing. Second, it's astonishing that the Roman officer knew his own unworthiness. Again, these are guys who worked very hard and faced danger. These are disciplined, strong men. They weren't the undisciplined masses, and they weren't the entitled elites. Their own worthiness, most of them believed, was hard-earned. Maybe some of you have worked very hard to become worthy, just like this guy. They didn't usually relinquish a belief in their own hard-earned worth. So for this Roman centurion to say that he was unworthy to have a Jewish peasant come into his house is astonishing. And this is what the text says next. It was astonishing to Jesus. It says this: when Jesus heard this, he was amazed at the centurion. And turning to the crowd, amazed is that word, by the way. Jesus was amazed at him. And turning to the crowd and following him, he said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Then the men who returned to the house and found the servant well. Jesus marveled. He was surprised. He was astonished. He was amazed at this man. If you just get that thought in your brain this morning, then it's been a good morning. Just think about it. Take into it. This guy amazed God. How cool a thought is that? He made God marvel. The Greek word here, which is, again, sometimes translated as amazed or surprised, it's found all over the Gospels, but it's only found twice in reference to a reaction from Jesus. There's lots of times where people were amazed by Jesus, but there's only 2 times where Jesus was surprised or amazed by someone else. Only twice. This is one of them. The other one happened when Jesus was in his own hometown. Mark 6:6, let's read this. Jesus left there and went to his hometown, accompanied by his disciples. And when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue. And many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things, they asked. What's this wisdom that has been given him? What are these remarkable miracles that he's performing? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? Who does he think he is taking on airs? We know who he is. And they took offense at him. And Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and in his own home. And he could not do any miracles there except for a few. And he was amazed, there's the word, at their lack of faith. All right. So notice what's happened. There are two instances recorded in the gospel in which Jesus marveled at other people. In the first, he marveled at the lack of faith present in his own hometown, his own people, the insiders. And in the second, he marveled at the great faith at a member of the oppressive invading army, at an outsider. In one case, again, he was astonished by the great faith, and the other, in the weak faith. And I think it's an amazing thought that sometimes God marvels. And wouldn't it be great if we could be like the Roman centurion and astonish God with our great faith? And wouldn't it be terrible if we were like those in his hometown and God marveled at our weak faith? So let's take a second and look at the text one more time and try to ask ourselves, what is it about this Roman officer? And how can we be like him? Well, the first thing we have to notice is that he recognized the authority of Jesus to heal him, to heal his loved one, to save them. He recognized the authority of Jesus to heal. And that's where you and I must begin. We must recognize the authority of Jesus to heal our brokenness, to come into our family and heal our loved ones. If we doubt, we confess those doubts to God, but we say the words anyway. Jesus, we recognize your authority to save us. I want you to say it with me. Jesus, we recognize your authority to save us. He has that authority. Second, the Roman officer confessed his own unworthiness. He confessed. He knew he was unworthy. Without for a second thinking his unworthiness made it impossible for Jesus to save, for Jesus to heal. And you and I must do this too. We must recognize that the salvation that Jesus offers doesn't come as a result of our worth. It comes in spite of our lack of worth. And at some point it will bring our worth along with it, but not because of us. All people, having within them the image of God, are of greater value than any of us can begin to fathom. I'm going to say that again. This is not a text about how people are bad or dirty or horrible or anything. All people, having within them the image of God, have greater value than we can imagine. But that value, as great as it is not sufficient to cause us to be worthy of the healing presence of God. We're not worthy of it. We don't deserve it. It's not as if God owes us his presence. He doesn't. But our own unworthiness is our limitation and not God's. God can heal us anyway, and he can come into our home anyway. So like the Roman soldier, we have to confess this to God. We have to say to him, God, we don't deserve your presence. We don't deserve your healing. But you, oh God, have the authority to give us your presence and your healing anyway. But say the word, and we will be healed. Just say the word, O God, and we know that your healing presence will enter our unworthy lives. Say that one with me too. Just say the word, O God, and we know your healing presence will enter our unworthy lives. These are the seeds of the kind of faith that can make God marvel. And I want to encourage you this week to lean on these prayers. Notice, however, there's an important difference between these two prayers that we prayed this morning and the request of the Roman centurion. Our prayers, while they're really beneficial and I think they're good, they're more abstract. We haven't asked for anything specific. The Roman centurion, he had something very specific, very tangible. He had a trusted servant, a loved one, something like that, who was sick, and he wanted him to not be sick anymore. Very concrete. We haven't prayed for anything concrete like that. You know, a mature understanding of the Gospels makes plain that the healings performed by Jesus were meant to call our attention to a more important kind of healing that all of us need, a spiritual healing. In some regard, of course, we're all blind, we're all lame, we're all sick. We know this. We need the healing power of Jesus. And coming to help us see this, Jesus healed real people from literal illness, that he can obviously still do this. But the more important thing that you and I need is we need to be healed from our spiritual sickness. And we can make our request of Jesus more like the Roman officer's request of Jesus by making an explicit request for something specific, some kind of, there's some aspect of your life where you're a little crazy, right? You don't think right, you don't feel right, and you know it. And you've been dealing with this, and you wish it could be different. There's something about you that's like that. I know there's something about all of us like that. Perhaps your life is controlled by fear and uncertainty, and you want Jesus to heal you of that. Maybe you have strong feelings of anger and resentment at somebody, and you just can't get over it. You want Jesus to heal you of that. Maybe you obsessively fantasize about some kind of life that's different than the one you actually live, and you know it's not healthy, but it's a pattern, and you want Jesus to heal you of that. I don't know what it is, but I believe that I want you to take a moment, and I'm just going to shut up for a second. I want you to actually do it. I want you to take a moment, and I want you to identify something in your life that you want Jesus to heal you of. I'm going to say that again in case you tuned out, because you're going to be going, why is everybody being quiet? This is weird. I want you to take a second and identify something in your life that you want Jesus to heal you of. And I'm going to be quiet while you do it. Now, you don't have to do this out loud, but I want you to tell Jesus. Don't just say the words. In your heart, tell it to Jesus. Say to him, Jesus, I recognize your authority to save me from. Now tell him this. Say, I am unworthy, Jesus, but if you just say the word, just say the word, and your presence will heal me of. And believe. You are healed. Right now. For right now. It's so cute. If you just believe. You know, God's healing is a moment-to-moment thing. Don't worry that your sickness may come back tomorrow or later today. You know the Roman centurion's servant? You know he eventually got sick and died, right? He's not still alive. The sickness came back, or some kind of sickness came back. When you pray these prayers, don't worry about tomorrow or the next moment. God's healing is about right now. That's why we're told, pray for bread for today, and don't worry about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble for its own. Just pray for bread today. Just right now, recognize that you are healed for right now in whatever way that you asked for healing for, just for right now. And then when you go out from here, keep these prayers before your heart and in your mind. Go back to them regularly throughout your day. If you do this, I want you to tune back into this because I want you to hear this. If you do this, if you will keep prayers like this always before your heart and mind, something amazing will happen in your life. There's going to come a time when you'll feel the presence of Almighty God, the creator and sustainer of all there is. And you're just going to laugh out in joy at a realization that something's happened to you and your great faith made God marvel. There's going to come a time when you're standing before Him and you're going to see in your soul the light in His eyes as He looks at you with pride in His voice. And He's going to say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Believe. He can help you overcome these things that beset you. He has the authority to do that. You know, this is what it means to be a student of Jesus, to be His apprentice, to be His disciple. It's why we rely on His authority to heal us and to make us like Him. And it's why faith is important. You remember when Jesus went into His own hometown? The text said that Jesus could not was the word that was used, do any miracles there except just a few because there wasn't faith. Jesus wants to heal us. He wants to save us from our sin, from our bondage to our brokenness. And He has the authority to do that, but He's not going to force His healing on us. He's not going to override our will. He won't force it. You know, the Gospel of Matthew also speaks about the authority of Jesus. In the Great Commission, it says this: "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded. And surely I am with you always, even to the very end of the age." Notice the authority and the connection to making disciples. Now, here's where I'm going to say something maybe a little contentious, but I believe it. I'm convinced that most churches don't have an appreciation for what it is to make a disciple of Jesus. We think about what it means to make a disciple, and we think it's all about convincing people to just believe certain things in their heads, right? Or at least claim to. And say those things out loud and get baptized and stop cussing and whatnot and go to church. And once you've done that, you've got everything Jesus has to offer. You get to go to heaven when you die. That's it. That's the game. And I agree. I know that it's important to make disciples. But I worry that my tradition, the church that I went to, which I love and respect dearly, very, very, very much, I worry sometimes, though, that it never properly informed me about what a disciple really is, nor how to go about making one. A disciple is a student, but it's particular, right? I mean, I can be a student in Mrs. Evans' math class without caring a lick about math, without ever trying to become like Mrs. Evans, right? But one can't be a student of Jesus without coming to care a great deal about what Jesus taught and who He is. Nor can one be a student of Jesus without making progress in becoming like Him. And me, I find myself unlike Jesus in many ways. I'm short-tempered with my kids when Jesus would laugh. I forget the things to do to show love and concern for my wife when doing those things would come very naturally to Jesus. I extend anger sometimes in the office when Jesus. I extend anger sometimes in the office when Jesus would naturally extend grace. I wonder how an event would cause others to think about me when Jesus would naturally wonder how the event was impacting others. I fill my daily thought life with questions of money when Jesus' daily thought life would be filled with things of the Spirit. It's a mistake now to become too discouraged because a student is still just a student. So don't spend your energy getting discouraged. Instead, spend your energy being a student, trying to do the things, keeping these prayers before your mind and trying to do the things that Jesus did. Again, so for very often in the church of my youth, I think that people sometimes thought that what it meant to make a disciple was just get people to say they believe certain things and do certain things, and then once they've done those things and kind of started going to church regularly enough and, don't cuss or whatever, then you get to go to heaven when you die. And that's what making a disciple was. That's all we ever thought about. But being a disciple is about learning to become the kind of person who's going to enjoy being with God in heaven. I'm a disciple when I make use of the power of the Spirit to become the kind of person who loves my family well, who sees myself and others clearly, and who's of the Spirit and not of the flesh. The command that make disciples means that we need to help one another progress as students of Jesus. That's what the church is supposed to be, a community of people helping one another become more like Jesus. If we only understand the Great Commission is what we're supposed to do for those outside the church, then we're in danger. We run the risk of starting to think that we're the in crowd. We're the worthy, and they're the out crowd. They're the unworthy. If we could just convince them to believe and think and act like us, then they could be among the worthy too. It's us and them. But the Great Commission doesn't just mean that. It also means that we're supposed to help each other be better students of Jesus. The best way to make disciples is to be a disciple. Makes me think of Huck Finn painting that fence, and everybody wants to join in when they see how much fun it is. As we progress as students of Jesus, and as He begins to save us from our brokenness, we enter in the abundant life of Christ. And people see it on us. They can't miss it. We live differently. There's joy, and the strain and stress of life is gone from us, and the thing that the world worries about has left us. And we've got a better way of living, and people think, how did they get that? I want that. There's the last 3 lines from the song, Dear Lord and Father of Mankind, goes like this. It's a prayer. It prays to God. It says, God, take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. We need the church. We in the church need each other to help us become more like our Savior, so progressively we can be saved from our sin, to remind us that from one moment to the next, Jesus has the authority to heal us in that moment from the bondage to sin. All right, so I've got to finish. I'm going to conclude with just the core of the sermon, the thing that I don't want you to miss. Even though you are broken, even though you are among the unworthy, Jesus has the authority to heal you. He'll come into your house, even though you're not worthy of Him coming into your house, and He will save you. He has the authority to do that. He has the authority to heal your spiritual sicknesses. And right now, He'll do this for you right now, for right now. This is a moment-to-moment thing. But Jesus is the ever-present heart changer. And He will save you. So surprise Him. Amaze Him with your great faith. Tell Him day to day and moment to moment, not just now, as you leave here throughout the week, tell Him that you recognize His authority to save you. Tell Him, Jesus, but say the word, and I will be well.